Chosen one, if a man has hurt a woman marked by God, he has stepped into a spiritual battlefield he never saw coming. What you're about to hear isn't revenge, isn't bitterness, and isn't ego. It is spiritual law. It is a divine order. It is the unseen justice God inflicts when someone wounds a chosen woman whose heart he himself guards. When a man wounds a woman God has set apart, he does not just break trust, he disrupts a divine assignment. You carry spiritual weight, favor, and covering he may not have understood. Hurting you shifts the atmosphere around him. Doors that once opened easily begin to resist. Peace becomes foreign. Rest becomes interrupted. God does not allow harm to go unnoticed because your heart carries his fingerprint. What he did wasn't just against you. It was against what God placed in you. A chosen woman may not chase, argue, or force closure, but heaven will chase him with conviction. Every time he tries to distract himself, something reminds him of what he mishandled. His spirit becomes unsettled. His thoughts replay conversations, moments, and choices. This is not nostalgia. It is God exposing the truth he tried to ignore. Conviction is the price he pays because heaven won't let him lie to himself about who you were to him. Before he hurt you, he may have missed opportunities, relationships, and momentum, but causing harm to a chosen woman shifts spiritual alignment. Suddenly, things that once flowed begin to stall. Connections detach. Plans collapse without warning. This is not punishment, it is misalignment. When a man mishandles someone heaven protected, his own favor becomes restricted until he faces the truth, corrects his path, and stops sowing destruction into people God values. One of the most painful consequences for him is seeing you elevate while he stagnates. God lifts chosen women quietly. No revenge, no warnings, no announcements. You rise with grace while he realizes, too late, that he has lost something sacred. His spirit senses it. His heart feels it. Even if he pretends he's fine, there is an ache that won't leave. He watches God restore you publicly after he damaged you privately. That contrast is part of his awakening. He may run toward someone else, thinking she will replace you, validate him, or distract him. But counterfeits cannot carry what you carried. They cannot love with the same purity, depth, or spiritual alignment. That new connection begins with excitement but ends in emptiness, because it was built on escape, not truth. God allows it to crumble, so he confronts what he ran from. Losing you opens his eyes. Losing the counterfeit reveals the lesson. Hurting a chosen woman triggers exposure. Not because you seek revenge, but because God protects his own. Lies get revealed. Hidden motives surface. People he tried to impress see the cracks in his character. He is forced to face the version of himself he tried to hide. This exposure isn't meant to destroy him but to humble him so he stops inflicting wounds he refuses to heal within himself. God pauses blessings when someone refuses to learn. When a man hurts a chosen woman and refuses accountability, heaven withholds expansion until he confronts what he did. This pause is the price he pays, not because God is cruel, but because unchecked harm creates generational damage. The pause wakes him up. It teaches him to lead with integrity, not ego. It pushes him to grow, mature, and become someone who no longer breaks what he's unprepared to handle. Every chosen woman carries something irreplaceable: spiritual depth, emotional intelligence, intuition, loyalty, and divine grace. When he loses that, he cannot recreate it. He cannot refine it. It is one of a kind, so he becomes haunted by flashes of your presence. Not because he deserves you back, but because God shows him the difference between a worldly connection and a God-sent woman. The realization hits deep. It follows him in quiet moments. That heaviness is part of the price. While he faces the consequences of his choices, God positions someone who sees you with spiritual clarity. Someone who values your heart, your anointing, and your calling. Someone who treats you with the honor he never offered. And the painful truth for him is that he will witness it, not out of cruelty, but out of divine contrast. God shows him, this is what you should have protected. This is what you chose to lose. This is what you mishandled. Even after everything, a chosen woman's prayers carry power. When you pray healing instead of vengeance, restoration instead of ruin, heaven moves. But your prayer does not erase his consequences. It transforms them. God uses conviction, loss, and reflection to rebuild him. And the only reason his story turns around is that a chosen woman he hurt still prayed with compassion instead of destruction. He pays a price, yes, but your intercession gives him a future beyond it. When a man wounds a chosen woman, his peace is disrupted at a spiritual level. Restlessness becomes his companion. Sleep feels shallow. Joy feels temporary. Even in crowds, his soul feels unsettled. This isn't guilt alone, it's spiritual imbalance. Hurting a chosen woman fractures alignment with God's order, and until he acknowledges his actions, his spirit cannot find equilibrium. Heaven keeps tugging on him, interrupting the false comfort he tries to build around himself. Chosen one, your love carried purity, depth, and sincerity that cannot be counterfeited. After hurting you, he begins to recognize the difference between real and shallow, between divine and convenient. Every new interaction exposes the rare quality of what he lost. This realization doesn't fade, it grows. It becomes a mirror he cannot escape. God allows these reminders so he sees the weight of mishandling a heart he himself entrusted. Hurting a chosen woman often comes from pride, ego, or spiritual immaturity, but pride collapses quickly under divine pressure. God begins stripping away the illusions he built around himself. His opinions don't carry the same power. His self-image gets challenged. His confidence feels shaken. Not to break him, but to humble him. God cannot elevate a man who abuses or neglects a woman he ordained for greatness. Pride must be dismantled before restoration can happen. Many men who hurt chosen women are acting from unhealed trauma. But when he harms you, God forces those wounds to the surface. Avoidance stops working. Distractions stop numbing him. The pain he buried starts demanding attention. This resurfacing is the price he pays because God will not let him continue destroying others from a place of brokenness. Your departure becomes the catalyst that pushes him into the healing he has run from his whole life. One of the consequences of hurting a chosen woman is realizing just how protected she always was. He watches things fall apart in his life while favor follows you. He sees doors open for you while he encounters resistance. This contrast is not a coincidence. It is divine evidence. God shows him, she wasn't ordinary, she was covered, she was sent, she was chosen, and harming her placed him at odds with heaven's design. He may try to find someone like you, but every attempt leads to frustration, not because other women are inadequate, but because what you carried was spiritual, not superficial. He discovers that chemistry cannot replace calling. Attraction cannot replace alignment. Excitement cannot replace destiny. Every failed attempt becomes another reminder of what he mishandled. This failure is not punishment, it is clarity. Even if he tries to forget you, he can't. Every woman he meets lacks something he can't explain. Emotional depth, spiritual intuition, that peaceful presence, that prophetic sensitivity, that unwavering loyalty. He doesn't realize it at first, but God gradually reveals the truth. He wasn't just dating a woman. He was connected to a destiny carrier, and destiny is not easily forgotten. Comparison becomes a quiet burden he carries. Hurting a chosen woman leaves a permanent imprint on a man's heart. He becomes more cautious, less reckless, less impulsive, not because he suddenly grew, but because losing you taught him what loss really feels like. Your absence becomes a teacher. Your dignity becomes a blueprint. Your healing becomes a reminder. God uses your experience to reshape how he treats every woman after you. He learns through consequences what he refused to learn through love. A man may pretend he's unaffected, but when he hurts a chosen woman, his internal confidence is shaken. He questions his decisions. He doubts his intuition. He feels uncertain in moments where he once felt bold. This internal conflict is spiritual. It is the effect of going against divine alignment. He cannot fully trust himself anymore, because deep down, he knows he broke something he was supposed to protect. Once he hurts a chosen woman and refuses to grow, God steps in with redirection. This looks like opportunities closing, relationships dissolving, or plans failing. At first, he blames circumstances, but eventually he realizes God is steering him toward accountability, humility, and healing. This redirection is mercy disguised as disruption. God is not done with him. He is simply unwilling to let him continue living at a level beneath his calling. When a man hurts a chosen woman, the shield of ego he relied on begins to crack. The excuses stop working. The narratives he told himself lose power. The image he tried to project feels hollow. This is divine dismantling. God removes the false layers, so he must confront the truth he avoided. He harms someone heaven elevated. The ego that once kept him blind becomes too heavy to carry. Hurting a chosen woman forces him to see places within himself he never wanted to acknowledge. Immaturity, fear, insecurity, emotional recklessness. These blind spots stay hidden until he crosses paths with a woman God handpicked. Once he hurts her, God brings every hidden flaw to the surface, not as punishment, but as preparation. What remains concealed cannot be healed. Exposure is the beginning of transformation, and it is part of the price he pays. At first, he may have viewed you as ordinary, but after hurting you, God begins revealing the truth. The peace you carried wasn't a coincidence. The intuition you had wasn't random. The way you prayed, encouraged, forgave, and uplifted him was divine. He realizes you weren't just a partner. You were a spiritual gift, a destiny helper, a prayer answered. But realization without stewardship always leads to regret, and that regret becomes a lifelong reminder. Being connected to a chosen woman brings blessings he never recognized: clarity, favor, protection, stability, and emotional grounding. When he hurts you, that covering lifts. Suddenly, he feels exposed. Decisions become harder. Negativity creeps in. Life feels heavier. He doesn't immediately understand why, but over time, he realizes what he felt in your presence wasn't just love. It was God's hand covering him through you. Losing that covering feels like losing oxygen. Hurting a chosen woman often triggers a divine chain reaction. Choices he avoided accountability for began resurfacing. Words he spoke carelessly come back with consequences. Patterns he hid get revealed. This isn't karma as revenge. It is God orchestrating truth. A chosen woman represents purity and alignment, so harming her opens the door for everything unresolved in his life to confront him at the same time. He cannot run anymore. Even if he tries to appear unaffected, people around him start seeing changes. His energy feels off. His confidence decreases. His demeanor shifts. Friends notice he's not as grounded or motivated. The family senses something is wrong. This is a spiritual consequence manifesting in the natural. Hurting a chosen woman carries weight that cannot stay hidden. The shift in him becomes visible because his spirit is no longer aligned with truth. After losing a chosen woman, he becomes hesitant with his emotions, not because he wants to protect himself, but because he fears repeating the same damage. What was once easy becomes complicated. Vulnerability feels threatening. Commitment feels risky. This guardedness is a quiet penalty. He struggles to love freely because he mishandled someone who loved him deeply. The wound he created in you becomes a fear reflected in him. Chosen women carry emotional intelligence, patience, and spiritual sensitivity that many men are not used to encountering. After hurting you, he begins to understand the level of maturity you walked in with, the way you communicated, the way you forgave, the way you understood his unspoken emotions, the way you prayed over him. He realizes too late that what he interpreted as ordinary effort was actually an extraordinary commitment. That realization is heavy. One of the most profound consequences is that God often closes the door permanently. Even if he wants to apologize, reconnect, or rebuild, he may find that heaven no longer grants him access to your life. This restriction is divine protection. God removes people from your story who cannot honor your calling. He feels the distance, the separation, the wall he cannot break, and that restriction becomes part of his spiritual awakening. When a man hurts a chosen woman, clarity often comes after loss. He begins to understand why your presence felt different, why your words carried weight, and why your absence feels spiritually heavy. He starts recognizing that your identity wasn't based on personality. It was based on calling. You were chosen, and he mishandled what heaven entrusted. This understanding reshapes how he approaches every relationship moving forward. After hurting a chosen woman, the forward motion he once relied on begins to slow. Projects stall, opportunities slip away, motivation fades without explanation. This isn't random. It is the spiritual cost of wounding someone God has positioned for a purpose. When he disrupts a divine connection, his own path becomes harder to navigate. Momentum dries up until he confronts the truth and stops operating from a place of ego and avoidance. Hurting a chosen woman exposes the gap between who he wants to be and who he truly is. He begins to understand that leadership is not about charm or confidence. It's about character, intentionality, and stewardship. His actions toward you reveal areas where he lacked emotional discipline and spiritual maturity. This realization hits hard. It forces him to rethink how he shows up in relationships, commitments, and responsibilities. It's part of the divine curriculum God enrolls him in. Before hurting you, he might have coped through distraction, denial, or emotional shutdown. But once he wounds a chosen woman, those methods lose their power. No matter how hard he tries to suppress it, the truth sits in his spirit. God interrupts the coping mechanisms he relied on by making avoidance uncomfortable. He feels every emotion he used to outrun. This emotional confrontation is part of his transformation. Chosen one, your connection wasn't casual. It was sacred, and once he hurts you, he becomes painfully aware of this truth. He begins to understand that intimacy with a chosen woman is a spiritual responsibility. The conversations, the trust, the vulnerability, and the openness were gifts from God. Hurting you wasn't just a mistake. It was a violation of sacred ground. That awareness follows him long after the relationship ends. Even if he projects confidence outwardly, internally, he begins wrestling with how he views himself. There's a part of him that cannot reconcile his actions with the man he believed he was. This internal conflict chips away at the identity he tried to maintain. It forces him to question his values, his choices, and his emotional capacity. Losing a chosen woman becomes the mirror that exposes the disconnect between his actions and his ideal self. Hurting a chosen woman often exposes generational wounds and destructive cycles. God uses the consequences of his actions to force him into self-awareness. He begins seeing how his upbringing, old habits, inherited behaviors, or generational trauma influenced his choices. This is painful, but it is purposeful. You become the catalyst God uses to break patterns that would have passed into the next generation. His pain becomes part of his healing. Men often underestimate the intuitive and prophetic edge chosen women carry. After hurting you, he begins remembering moments when you saw what he couldn't, sensed what he hid, or spoke into situations with accuracy. He realizes you weren't emotional, you were spiritually perceptive. You didn't overthink, you discerned. What he dismissed as intensity was actually divine insight. This realization humbles him and reshapes how he values spiritually aligned women. Hurting a woman with divine purpose destabilizes his own direction. The clarity he once had becomes cloudy. The dreams he envisioned feel less attainable. The sense of purpose he carried becomes diluted. This is not to punish him, but to awaken him. God is using the void left by your absence to reveal how dependent he was on your presence, wisdom, and grounding energy. Until he matures spiritually, direction stays unclear. Hurting a chosen woman exposes the real state of his heart. He sees his impatience, selfishness, fear, or emotional immaturity for what it is. He can no longer hide behind excuses or performance. The truth becomes too loud to ignore. This confrontation is painful but essential. God allows this clarity so he stops operating from a distorted self-image and begins pursuing genuine transformation instead of appearance management. One of the most sobering lessons he learns is that relationships spiritually assigned by God are not casual. They come with responsibility, accountability, and spiritual weight. Hurting you teaches him that divine connections must be protected, not mishandled. He realizes that love tied to purpose demands maturity, and the loss of you becomes the anchor that finally teaches him what accountability truly means. After hurting a chosen woman, the escape routes he relied on collapse. He can't outrun accountability. He can't hide behind excuses. Every path he takes leads back to the truth he avoided. God removes the shortcuts and forces him to confront the emotional responsibility he refused to carry. This is part of the spiritual correction needed for his growth and future relationship. Chosen women often love with a depth that men don't recognize until it's gone. After hurting you, he begins to understand the emotional stability, patience, empathy, and spiritual insight you contributed to the relationship. That labor was invisible to him until your absence made it undeniable. He realizes that he didn't just lose companionship, he lost the emotional foundation you gracefully built. What seemed harmless at the time starts weighing on him. Words he spoke carelessly echo back with conviction. Moments he ignored replay with regret. Decisions he made rashly now feel costly. This heaviness is divine illumination. God is teaching him the value of intentionality, especially with someone who carries spiritual significance. Each careless choice becomes a teaching moment he can't escape. Hurting a chosen woman exposes the true price of immaturity. It costs him connection, peace, clarity, and spiritual alignment. He realizes that emotional inconsistency, lack of communication, or fear of vulnerability aren't just personality quirks, they are destructive patterns. God uses this experience to highlight the maturity required to handle a woman tied to destiny. Immaturity is no longer a safe place to hide. In a world full of shallow connections, your authenticity becomes unforgettable. He begins recognizing that your intentions were pure, your love was sincere, and your presence was grounding. These reminders don't fade. They become louder with time. God uses your authenticity as a contrast against the superficial relationships he encounters afterward. This is part of his awakening, part of his inner reformation. There comes a moment when he realizes that the peace he felt, the opportunities he walked in, and the protection he enjoyed weren't just from his own strength. They were tied to your prayers. Your intercession covered him in ways he never noticed. After hurting you, the absence of those prayers feels like a spiritual void. He recognizes the weight of what he dismissed. Even if he tries to move forward, something inside him yearns for the grounding presence you carried. Your voice, your wisdom, your calm, your intuition created emotional stability he didn't know he needed. After losing it, he realizes that no amount of distraction can replace what you contributed. This longing teaches him that emotional stability isn't common. It's sacred. You didn't break him, you revealed him. The relationship forced him to see flaws he didn't want to address. Avoidance kept those red flags hidden, but hurting you brought them to the surface. Now he has to face the insecurities, fears, and emotional gaps that led to his actions. This confrontation is part of the divine process. God is using discomfort to push him into authenticity. After losing a chosen woman, he no longer sees relationships as casual or replaceable. He recognizes the difference between chemistry and calling, between attraction and purpose, between interest and alignment. You were the relationship that redefined his standard. You were the woman who taught him the spiritual weight of connection. That shift stays with him for the rest of his life. Once he hits a point of spiritual and emotional exhaustion, God starts rebuilding him. Not instantly, not easily, but intentionally. The consequences he faced became the foundation for his transformation. God uses the pain of losing you to construct the man he was meant to be. Humble, responsible, aligned, and spiritually awake. You were the catalyst for his rebirth, even if he never earns another chance with you. After hurting a chosen woman, a man begins to understand that the peace he felt with her was not ordinary. It was spiritual, it was God-given. Without you, his world feels noisier, heavier, more chaotic. He tries to recreate that peace through distraction, work, or new connections, but nothing matches the calm your presence carried. He realizes too late that you were the sanctuary his spirit depended on. Before you, he may have struggled with inconsistency, but your presence softened those edges. Once he hurts you, the emotional chaos returns with full force. Mood swings, uncertainty, confusion, irritability. This happens because he rejected the very person God sent to help regulate his emotions and elevate his growth. The inconsistency becomes a teacher, forcing him to confront the emotional discipline he lacked. He remembers moments when you warned him, felt something was off, or sensed something he thought didn't matter. Only afterward does he realize your intuition was consistently accurate. The very sensitivity he once dismissed becomes the wisdom he now respects. God uses this realization to humble him and teach him the value of spiritually intuitive women. He might try to act unbothered, he might pretend he's fine, but the Spirit does not lie. Something inside him grieves the loss deeply, not because of ego or attachment, but because his spirit recognizes the significance of what he lost. Spiritual connections don't break cleanly, they leave an imprint. His mourning becomes the silent evidence of a bond heaven once authored. Chosen women carry a protective grace. You prayed for him, you covered him, you shielded him from spiritual attacks he never knew were aimed at him. After hurting you, he begins experiencing resistance he didn't face before. Life feels harsher, setbacks come faster. That isn't punishment, it's a revelation. He realizes that you weren't just loving him, you were interceding for him. Your words carried life. You knew how to build him up, redirect his thinking, and speak to the potential inside him when he couldn't see it himself. After hurting you, he notices that no one else speaks to his spirit the way you did. Encouragement feels flatter. Compliments feel empty. Motivation feels temporary. He realizes that your voice carried divine authority he didn't appreciate. Without your presence to challenge or refine him, the darker parts of his character become harder to hide. Impulsiveness, anger, selfishness, emotional avoidance, these qualities begin resurfacing, revealing the areas he still needs to heal. Hurting a chosen woman forces a man to confront the very traits he tried to conceal. God brings them to light so transformation can begin. Chosen connections are tied to divine timing. By hurting you, he stepped outside of alignment. When he looks back, he realizes how perfectly timed your presence was, how aligned your connection felt, how divinely orchestrated the bond was. Missing that timing becomes a burden he carries. He understands that he didn't just lose you, he stepped out of God's ordained moment for his life. In a world where loyalty is conditional and self-serving, yours stood out. You stayed when others would have left. You believed when others would have doubted. You fought for the connection even when it was inconvenient. After hurting you, he encounters people who operate from self-interest, not devotion. Suddenly, your loyalty becomes priceless in hindsight. This is one of the hardest lessons. God begins revealing glimpses of the version of himself he was meant to become while connected to you. Stronger, wiser, more disciplined, more grounded, more spiritually aligned. He sees the potential he squandered, the growth he delayed, the blessings he blocked, and the future he forfeited. This revelation becomes the quiet ache that follows him into every future relationship. Chosen one, hear this with your whole spirit. The regret he carries is not your burden. It is your confirmation. Confirmation that your worth was real, that your love was divine, that your presence was purpose. You were never meant to shrink so he could feel tall. You were never meant to break so he could learn lessons the hard way. You were meant to rise, to evolve, to step into the destiny God handcrafted specifically for you. His loss is not your loss. It is your liberation, your elevation, your rebirth. You are not defined by those who failed to value you. You are defined by the fact that God chose you, equipped you, and anointed you to walk into a future far greater than the pain you survive. Stand in your power, walk in your purpose, know who you are, a chosen woman destined for greatness, clarity, and divine favor. If this message spoke to your spirit, join the mission. Like, comment, and subscribe so you stay connected to a community built on purpose, elevation, and divine truth. Amen.